Good evening to you, our listeners and viewers of this special program of Progress Report. I am Travis Bruce, and I'll be your host for this evening. In studio with me, coming live from NCN, is Honorable Minister of Parliamentary Affairs and Governance, Gail Teixeira, and we will be discussing several issues regarding government and also claims peddled by the APNU-AFC coalition. Thank you so much for being here, Minister.
Thank you for having me again, Travis.
No problem. So, of course, I want us to talk firstly about the salary increase that we have seen announced by Minister Ashni Singh, and that is 7% across the board. We've also seen a number of measures or efforts by government to ensure this is sustained, with allocations for frontline workers, but also assessing the public sector and understanding that equal pay is necessary for the future. So could you tell me briefly, of course, in that regard, what are your thoughts about the increase thus far?
Well, I think that what we have to start with is that in 2015, 2019, we had a country that was having problems in terms of the economy, in terms of cost of living, in terms of the number of people who lost their jobs. 30,000 people lost their jobs in the 5 years, of which 7,000 were sugar workers. And then, of course, we had the long, drawn-out trial of democracy from the no confidence motion to the results and the final declaration and swearing in of President Ali. We had a situation then where COVID started. Our first case was March the 11th, in the dead midst of the post-election issues. And so we have come through a lot as a country, as a people. The increases that have been given are based on not just a one-off and we're just doing it now. What we've done from August the 2nd, 2020 has been recognizing immediately we had to give household relief to every single household of Ghana, $25,000. We had to also increase, as we promised in the manifesto, the increase in the old age pension, the increase in the public assistance, that we would restore the cash care program. And that came in, for example. We also have had a one-off payment for old age pensioners, public assistance recipients, as well as disabled persons. So almost every month there's something happening in Guyana in terms of trying to cushion the impact of what we inherited, in terms of what the state of the economy, the private sector, the sugar industry, rice, bauxite. We're all having trouble, all. And so to cushion that, but also to deal with the reality of COVID-19. And so we've done almost every month you can trace something happening, something being done in terms to cushion the impact on our people. We promised in our manifesto we would remove the 200 taxation measures to immediately give relief to our people. And so that was done. So what we have, this is another, the way that when you're listening to the opponents of the government, it's to make this look as if this is an isolated issue. It's not isolated. This has been a continuum of things taking place from the time we got into government, in the budget of 2020, post-budget 2020, 2021 budget, and almost every month there's something happening. For example, August was the cash care program. Yeah. You know, September was the old age pension increase of the 25,000 one-off. In this period, we're trying to deal with the flood relief, which is it's slow and being done in every region. This has never happened before in Guyana. This has never happened before in Guyana, where almost every single month you're seeing efforts by the government to help our people cope with what is a global situation and what is a inheritance, as we call it, the legacy of AFC that we're trying to overcome. And so it is convenient. They have convenient memories. I'm reading Mr. Jordan talking about that he restored the subsidies on water and electricity, that their salary increases they gave were tax-free. Utter nonsense. Not true. But the thing is that I think they're horribly embarrassed. They made such a bosh. They just botched of everything when they're in government. Now when they see that there's a government that is actually trying, whether some people who don't like us at all. Ordinary people are pleased to see things happening. I've just been seeing photographs coming from 4 Mile, Pataro, in Region 7. I've seen photographs of different parts of the interior, which had no roads, no water in the past. Within less than what is it, how many months we've been in? 13 months? That every single region of Guyana, something's happening. So if you treat the 7% as a one-off, that this is an isolated event. It's not an isolated event. It's part of a continuum of events and incidents and interventions by the government to help our people manage in this difficult situation. And Travis, I think you and I exchanged last night the increases given by other countries for salaries. Guyana, with a 7%, a small developing country, had the highest percentage of salary increases versus the larger developed countries of the world. And so we are doing a lot in terms of the circumstances we face. And so I think that the naysayers amongst us have a lot of explaining to the people, not to us. We know the answers, but they have explanations to the people. Why, when they're in government, they botched up so badly? Why was the economy in so much trouble? Why did they close down 3 of the four sugar estates and put 7,000 people out of work, impacting on approximately 200,000 people in our population? Why is some of the unions who are speaking now were silent, Travis? Silent. Remember? 2015, they were promised 20% salary increase within the first year. The first year came, it went. Second year came and went. Until the teachers, not the public service unit, Mr. Yard has been silent under Abner Granger. Totally silent. He was totally compromised. He didn't go out there and talk about the public servants who were suffering. The teachers' union, finally in 2017, got the spunks to get up and go and protest. And that's when they got an increase. You know, but they also said other things that were very interesting, Travis. I think it's, I don't want to misquote the name of the head of the union, but he said that before the elections of 2015, they were promised 20%. And they gave their vote to Mr. Granger. And in 2017, after going round and going round, they had got nothing. And they went to protest. And so, do people have such short memories? You know? Or do they think in this very electronic world that we live in, where you can Google and find out who said what when? Yeah. This is the fascinating thing about this world. My generation, the older generation, we have to go look through papers. We have to do the manual thing. You just press certain things and things come up. And so, do they not understand that? Do they not remember that this is a world where you smile the wrong way, you look the wrong way? It's captured forever, posterity. You know, so the 7% is what we can do now. And in the Minister Ashni Singh's statement, he said in the very beginning that in the 2022 analysis, we will be looking at removing some of the disparities and the unevenness where a person has the same degree with different salary scales, and to look at trying to rectify that, because we want more qualified people in the public service. You want to reward the public servants who've gone and received more qualifications, so that we have a more professional, highly modern and efficient public service. And so we have to reward that. And so next year the increases may be staggered, may be differentiated, I don't know. That will come out of the wash. But we are indicating that we will be dealing with the discrepancies that do exist. You know, so I think we should be proud of what we've gone how far we've got so far, you know, in terms of being able to bring relief to our people. Yeah. You know.
Minister, you mentioned there about some of the things that you would have been seeing in the public domain.
Yeah.
Of course, on social media, members of the coalition, they took there and they were talking about the fact that it would be taxed. Could you shed some light in that regard, and also in comparison to the increase that public servants got to those of the sugar workers, that 250,000 payoff? So if you could shed some light in that regard.
Thank you. The income tax, your salaries are taxed. There's no way they offered or gave, and so it's not true. They did not give tax-free increases in salaries. You can't. You would have had to go to Parliament with an amendment. There was no Parliament. Parliament wasn't meeting, unless this again they broke the law, which of course we wouldn't be surprised about. But the point is, you can make certain allowances tax-free, but your salary, you can't do that, what you earn. And so what we have in our country is the income threshold. So by law, each year we change the threshold, or every couple of years. So I think right now it is, I think it is 65,000 per month is tax-free.
Okay.
Right? And so if someone's earning that level, that's what, 65 times 12? That's what, 7, 8... Now I'm embarrassing myself, I can't remember what it is. But the point is that below that amount, you don't pay tax at all. And so if someone is getting 70,000, they're paying tax on the 5,000 differential divided by 1/3. And that's what you're paying every month, right? Now, we're not saying that this increase is manna from heaven and we're giving everybody huge amounts of money. We're not saying that. We're saying, though, that look at what has been done in the last year. Household relief, all the increases, the pensions, the old age assistance, the cash care program, intervention after intervention that are trying to help our people keep their nose above water, help them to have a better life in the context of a global pandemic where other countries are suffering as well as us, and where the cost of living is not of our making, where the shipping costs have gone up 6-10 times, where materials that are being imported to make things are also far higher, and in which just even when you look at things that we produce here, the cost of inputs have made them more expensive. So if you're having rice and sugar, for example, but you have to use fuel, you have to use other things that are high on the world market price. And even if they're not high, the fact of shipping alone increases them. So that the issue of income, they could not have, there's no proof they gave. This is the problem with the APNO AFC. I think they have become, they have been so entrapped in telling lies that they believe the lies now. You know, so they're entrapped. What is the phrase? What a web we weave when we that practice to deceive. This is what they're doing. And so they say that we promised 50%. We did not promise 50%, ever. Because, first of all, it's unsustainable. Even if one would wish to do it, it's not sustainable in any society, including the big powerhouse countries of the world. It's not sustainable. The other issue is that this playing of the game, everything that happens in Guyana, who injects ethnicity into it? Who injects ethnicity into every single issue? APNO AFC and their cohorts. And so to say now, oh, the sugar workers, 7,000 men and women lost their jobs. That was, some lost it in December 2016, some lost in December 2017. When did they get their severance pay, according to which is required by the law of Guyana? Some got in 2019, 2018, some got in the late, two got in 2018, 2 sets. So they had to wait from 2016 to 2018. And some of the Wales workers did not get, even in 2018. So you're talking about men and women losing their jobs and can't find a job, and who haven't even got their termination benefits, which they're entitled to. What we have done is righting an injustice. It was unjust what happened, and also in violation of the laws of our country. So we're saying we're giving the workers who were terminated. Some have found jobs, some have not. But there are 7,000 men and women who lost their jobs and who were unemployed for years. They are getting $250,000 each. The worker, right? So if they have a problem with that, I'm trying to play the game. You see, they gave the Indo-Guyanese sugar workers, but they're not giving the public servants who have a different ethnicity. This is all the bottom line of the APNO AFC. When they hit rock bottom, that's where they go to. Automatic replay. They have to go to the ethnic issue. And so when you look at the performance, I remember, Travis, when we were in Parliament, there was a flood in Region 8. And for the first time, we had a kind of flash flood in Region 8, where houses were swept away, where schools and health centers were damaged. And I think it is Mr. Kroll, Colin Kroll, who asked a question and asked that what help would be given. What did the APNO AFC do? They sent CDC in, they sent APA, the Armenian People's Association, with some hampers and stuff like that. But when you ask, well, are you helping with their houses to be reconstructed or to relocate or whatever? They said no. They weren't giving any compensation. They were not. And so we as a government, and whenever the PEP has been in government, we have always tried to bring relief to people, particularly those who are the most poor and the most vulnerable. And this is just one of the many in a series starting on August the 2nd when we got into government, and this will continue to be many of the things we do for our people.
Yeah, thanks for that, Minister. Of course, also we have seen the Guyana Teachers Union release a statement in regard to the increase specifically for teachers, saying that in 2020 there was no increase, so they kind of divided the 7% to amount to 3.5 basically for teachers, and also saying that it's not sufficient because of the COVID-19 pandemic, teachers having to work from home, etc., and that there are no real benefits for teachers in this increase or, in budget even to come. What would you say in that regard?
That's a hard one to deal with, because one of the things that showed that what people were kind of glad about not going out to work was they were able to save money that they would have used for transportation and clothing and other things. So, but that's across the board for many people across the world, not only Guyana. As far as I know, there were salary increases given in 2020, which the teachers benefited from. They're correct in terms of the agreement with teachers per se, their multi-year agreement, but in terms of the public service, which they're part of, they benefited. And so this, again, I don't know, Jordan's mathematics seem to be infecting people. It seems to be a virus like coronavirus, because it's rather convenient. What was given to the teachers was part of the package for public servants. And therefore, as I said earlier when we were speaking just now, is that I have no problem with any union fighting for more salaries, better conditions. Of course, that's what the labor movement's there for. But the labor movement is also there to stand up for workers' rights. And they had very little to say about the sugar workers who lost their jobs. Very little to say about the 30,000 people who lost their jobs in those years. Almost, as I said, silent. So they can't be playing this political game. They're labor movement, they're trade unions. They're there to protect the workers. So when they get up and make statements in defense of the workers, I can live with that, because that's their role. They're expected to do that. But they can't be convenient and not deal with what happened. And that is, for me, that all those 5 years, Public Service Union never said a peep. Never said a peep. And every year they would give out across the board It's only in the last year, 2019, by the way. This 8.5% they're talking about, remember, Travis? This came in 2019, after the no confidence motion, when they realized we are facing an election. If we can hold it off, good. But we're going to face an election. That is when they brought the salary increase. And that was when it was staggered. All along it wasn't staggered. And so APNU AFC will do it when it's convenient and when they realize that an election was around the corner. The election was around the corner. Whether they were going to hold it off for a year or 2 years or 3 years, they were going to face elections. You know, so people are picking, what do you call it, cherry-picking issues out without looking at the context that they were in. And so, yes, the teachers went on strike in 2017. They were very brave. They were very courageous. They did it well. And they went back to their multi-year agreement, and they really didn't get much out of it. They got I can't remember the figures now, unfortunately, but they certainly, the 7% was, if their calculation is 77% for 2 years was 3.5, then what was the calculation of 7% for 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018? Not divide by 4, if I'm using their mathematics.
I want to bring in right here, of course, there is the issue when the APNU AFC got into power. One of the first things that they did within the 100 days was to raise their ministers' package or salaries. In that regard, how do you see that translate into the claims that they're making that persons or the average Guyanese right now is not benefiting and they would have benefited in that time?
It's more than that even. It's the way in which they did it. You remember in the August 2015 budget, the first budget they would bring, they were asked on the floor by our side, we hear you're giving ministers salary increases. Is that true? No, Jordan defended and said, we are telling lies. It's not true at all. Budget finished on, what was it, August, near the end of August, and September 1st Gazette came out with giving themselves increases going back to July 1st. Now, they won the election May the 15th. And some of their ministers were now being appointed in June. So within less than a month working, they gave themselves a big package, right? And what was the rationale according to Mr. Harman? This was to prevent stealing. And, people were compensated for the fact that they all had these high salaries before they became minister, which was not true either, that this would be a way of preventing corruption. Well, we now know that theory did not work of Mr. Harman. That did not work. But the fact is that it was clandestine, it was secretive. They denied it to the media, they denied it in the House, and they went ahead and did it. And most glaringly, GPSU said not a peep. Teachers' Union said not a peep. The guy at Trade Union Congress said not a peep. They were silent. And so it's interesting that when the PPP is in government, everyone feels confident. And that's good. It's a sign of democracy that they can speak out. And I then put it back to them, what happened to them in 2015 to 2020. Why did they lose their tongue?
Of course, there is another part. Just before we go into this other section of our discussion, I want to touch on this part where we have seen persons stating that Vice President Dr. Bharat Jagdeo is the first one to come up with this 50% increase, while the PPC was in opposition. In that regard, how does that contextualize in this situation?
The debate in Parliament, if I remember correctly, had to do with the secretly signed agreement with Exxon. And that therefore, when it did all came out in the public, because that was done in, I think, October 2016, by the time 2017, when you had all the sugar workers losing their jobs, we were discovering, for example, that Mr. B.K. Tiwari International was being paid $1.5 billion for a matter that hadn't finished in court in an IDB project. You were finding out about the drug bond, for example, the famous drug bond, which the owner of that earned over $300 million over 3 years in a bond that had some bits of old equipment in and stuff like that. So the scandals are atrocious. But the issue is that in the debate, if my memory is correct, because I didn't have time today to go back and check, was that speaking about when in December 2017, the whole thing came out of the 18 million signature bonus. And that's when the letter that Jordan signed to the Bank of Ghana, telling them to keep the money in an overseas interest-bearing account. All along they denied that there was an agreement. They denied that there was a signature bonus. In that context, in the debate, if my memory is correct, Mr. Jagdeo says, with the kind of money that we could have made with the agreement, not the agreement they signed, but if we had fought for the kind of royalty that we should have gotten, and with the signature bonus, we could have paid a 50%. That this was possible based on revenue you would have earned. But maybe some of them have a problem with interpretation.
And
but as I said, that's just my memory.
Of course, there is a claim that the PPPC administration, just going back briefly to the water, reversal of VAT on water, could you shed some light in that regard of when it was done and exactly what, the rationale behind it? In APNU they took away the subsidy, which was water and electricity on the elderly, so that we were able to in the budget we promised we would restore those things, and we did, and it was an attempt to make sure that elderly persons who are not working would be able to have a reduced issues in terms of trying to manage their lives. But as far as I remember, that all the tax measures that we brought in were in the first budget we brought last year, in terms of removing the VAT on essential items, removing VAT on drugs and pharmaceuticals and medical supplies, going back to what was 2006 actually, what we had there. And in terms of restoring the subsidies on the water and electricity, which had been removed. And so that's my memory. That's the last quarter of last year. I think a number of things in the budget debate, in the election campaign, that APNU started to parrot, because they realized these were issues that had made them lose support. But we actually brought it in the first budget last year. And it has made a difference in people's lives. We removed the VAT on the electricity, on water, so that people weren't paying VAT on water as they were before. And also too in terms of a number of the other things like licensing fees, which had gone up, and things like that. So we were able to remove those, and that also removed a lot of the impediments on the private sector in terms of a number of things they needed to do without all the heavy impact of taxation. And so I think that what we have seen, and I said there are a ream of taxes that we either reversed, we amended from the APNU time in the 2020 budget that are important for the way in which we freed up the economy in a sense. This was what it was holding the economy down, and so that has, I think that has helped to create some confidence that, one, we made a promise and we kept it, and one after the other promises we've kept as a party in government. We promised the housing program would be restored. I think it's over 7,000 house lots we've given out. We have companies, contractors building designed houses that are designed for low-income people at a price cheaper than what was for Ferguson and the CHNPA
houses that they were building, what you call the condominium ones that they were building. We have been doing that so that we are seeing in every region housing programs, water, bridges, health centers, police stations, schools being dealt with. Areas we'd never had schools before, now having schools. So that all of this is showing that we're working at several layers of government. One, in terms of we have a pro-poor, pro-people approach in terms of bringing relief, in terms of access to services and having better quality services, and then in terms of how do we expand the economic base, agriculture, being able to have better communications on road and so on, so bridges, so that goods can move. So the whole transformation of our country is premised on, one, a democratic foundation, on a mandate we got from the people, and thirdly, in terms of a vision of where this country could go. We have a golden opportunity right now to do it right, to get it right as a people. And so the road networks being developed, the bridges being developed to make us be modern, a deep water harbor, hotels, the bridge across the Quarantine River. These are they're very radical in the sense that in a very short space of time, our geographic landscape is going to change. It will look different.
Yeah.
Will look very different. You know, so I mean, I'll just tell you, when I left here as a little girl, a young girl actually, and came back 10 years later, Ghana still looked the same. I could go in different areas I'd been to and find the same houses that were there. And everything looked the same. And basically, we've kind of looked the same for a long time. We've done improvements over time, but we've kind of looked the same. And what we're talking about is a transformation of our geographical architecture and the way in which we are seen as a young country, you know, and whether we will be the Singapore of the Caribbean, who knows? Mm-hmm. But there's an energy and dynamism in our country, and the young people want to be part of this. They don't want to be, buffeted by this constant, every time you make a step forward, there's someone pulling you back and saying, don't like what the PPP does, because they're PPP, stay away from them. And the young generation, whether their parents are APNO, AFC, and whatever political party, they want to move forward. They want to see, they want to benefit, they want to get better salaries, they want to have houses and cars. There's a new generation. So this whole idea of sticking with the public service for 35 years until you retire, that era is gone, and the union hasn't recognized that. Our people want to be able to work, they want to choose, they leave places in different work here 5 years, 10 years, some may work longer. But the idea of, for the young generation to stay in the public service for 33 years or 35 years in one place is not attractive. I don't know if I'm right, but that's my impression. You know? But they want to move up and they want to do well. And they want to be able to have the prestige and status of doing well and being able to show it materially. You know, unlike the generation before, you know, or my parents' generation, which was you work and you get this and you get this and you get your pension and that's it. And my generation, my parents' generation would have been proud to be in the public service for 30, 35 years and retire. It was a matter of prestige. Today, the young generation have a different attitude. They want to see the country move forward. They want to see new companies come in. They want to be able to have options, choices. I can work in the public service for 3 years, but there's a new company coming that's offering an interesting service or an interesting area that I'd like to get into, so I can switch. And that mobility of the working class, of the working people, is something that Yard could never understand. He's incapable of understanding it, you know, because he's in the old rut. And so we are going to work on public service reform and on creating a modern, professional, efficient public service. Yeah. But we also recognize that it's going to be constant. Constantly you have to work on it, because they are going to be the younger generation is going to move around. What you want is that the country doesn't lose them as much as possible, that they have a future here. So if they don't want to work in the public service, they can work in the private sector. So the future is here in Guyana.
Minister, we're already coming down to program time, unfortunately. But, my final question to you at this time would have to be, what can we expect for Budget 2022? Where will it take Guyana deeper into this transformative agenda that President Ali speaks about often? And also, just a little bit, I want to pick your brain on the private sector. We have seen them working harder. We have seen government supporting and offering training, capacity building in every regard, and consultation, which is important for the economy. How is that process so far? And also, what can we expect in that regard?
Well, I think President Ali has indicated a number of areas in terms of 2022. 2022, I think, is going to be a big year for us in terms of a number of the projects that are embryonic right now or just beginning in terms of design or going out to tender and things like that. So 2022 is going to be a very important year in terms of making sure the machinery is working well and that we're on the road and that we're working at a good pace. And so there are a number of things he speaks about, new hotels, new hospitals, top-notch healthcare, new university, and all the other things we've been speaking about, and agriculture, agro-processing, etc. But I think too, the private sector, I think, is being motivated in a variety of ways. And I think that some of the companies will get into joint ventures to be able to quickly build the capacity to deal with some of the demands that we will have to go through as a country. But I think that we are not going to, I can't say that 2022 we're going to do X, Y, and Z. What I do know is that the discussions with the budget agencies have been going on, and they all are very clear, at least the ministers are clear on what are some of the interventions they have to bring in 2022. The final cut, of course, because all of us as ministers could put down what we wish for or what we think, and obviously we have to live within the budgetary confines. We're also going to see, I think, 2022 is going to be a challenging year globally because of what's happening in the economy globally, what's happening with shipping, what's happening availability of resources. And so a number of countries are anticipating, and we have to too. We can't be naive and say that for some reason, we're going to be, we're not going to face the same challenges. So as I think I said to you the other night, is that you go to New York and you go down Manhattan and the number of shop fronts just, closed. And that's one of the most important, one of the most important capital cities in the world. And you're seeing in the main areas, this is not some little hick town outside. This is in Manhattan. The issues of shop fronts, of big shop fronts, big signs saying closed. So those are, we have to be optimistic and we have to be clear in our vision. But at the same time, we have to recognize that there are going to be many challenges because of COVID. And the longer COVID takes to prevents us from getting back to our lives, normal lives, this is going to be, a strain on our nation, on our country. And also just to put in a side thing, and that is that the longer our people don't get vaccinated, I think Dr. Anthony announced that we have about 51% of people who have received both dosages, which is a very good thing.
Adult population.
Adult population, thank you. Yeah, so 51%. Well, it's not 70%, which is what we're gearing for. So we still have people who are not being vaccinated and who don't want to be vaccinated. And as we said, it's not mandatory. But until we can have 70 to 80% of the people vaccinated, adult population, we are going to be living in this kind of walking on eggshells. So we now open up a bit more, but if there's a sudden spurge, we may have to come back again. And so this is this is going to be, for many countries, you've seen in many countries, they open back up and then such lockdown. We have not locked down our country since we've been in government, but you've had to step back on measures, move back. And so the issue of vaccination is critical. The vaccination of children, we brought in Pfizer. And as Dr. Anthony said, is that there's been a slowdown of the group between 11 and 17. And now we want to start with the children, the smaller ones, 5 to 11. But the same adults, the same parents are the ones who may be anti-vaxxers, who will not want their children to be vaccinated. And so this is something that I think is holding us back, because we're one of the few countries in this region that our people have the choices of vaccines. You know, you have a choice of Pfizer, of Moderna, of AstraZeneca, of Sinopharm, of Sputnik. You know, we have vaccines now for the group that's 11 to 17. We will be having vaccines for the 5 to the 11. We're one of the few countries in the entire region that has those choices, particularly a small developing country like us. You know, we're not Canada, we're not the United States, and yet we're offering our people this. So I think, and in fact, I understand, I hear that Guyanese who are abroad who can't get vaccinated, or different countries, they come home just to get vaccinated. And first of all, it's free. Yeah. So I mean, that still will remain at that challenge. Climate change will continue to be with us, and the issue of unpredictable weather patterns and so on. So 2022 will have some of the same challenges as this year, but of course, the interesting thing that that Dr. Ali is clear as our president of what he's doing. He's not afraid to go out to the people and explain. He is not the president of the past, who didn't have press conferences, who didn't go out and meet the people. This is a president who's very out there and is willing to tell everybody who will listen, and those who won't even listen, to what is the vision for our country. And so people can't say that they're not aware. People really can't say in this country, this government is doing something secretly. We're talking all the time. It's in the newspapers, investors coming in, people being taken to show different things. It doesn't mean that every investor comes in that there's going to be an investment. But our door's open. And Guyana is on the map. Not for Jonestown, not for rigged elections, not for 2020 attempt to hijack the elections, but because people recognize this country is a little dynamite, you know, in this part of the world. And shouldn't we be proud as Guyanese of that? Shouldn't we be happy? Why is it always got to be tainted that you shouldn't be happy because it's PPP doing it? You know, when are we going to grow up and be mature about this? This is our country, and we're blessed, and whatever good that can come out of what we're doing, everyone will benefit. And that's what we want for our country.
Yeah, definitely.
You know?
Lovely words to close off our program. And of course, it is an exciting time to be involved in Guyana. That's the word on the street by persons involved in business, even tourists. They're very excited to come here and see what this country has to offer. I want to thank you so much, Minister, for taking time out to be here.
Thank you for having me. Yes,
and also thank you to our listeners and viewers of this program of Progress Report. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Wear a mask correctly for maximum protection against COVID-19. Avoid touching the face mask while using it. If you do, wash your hands with clean water and soap, or lather with alcohol-based hand sanitizer for at least 20 seconds. Let us do our part in preventing the spread of COVID-19. A message from the Ministry of Health in collaboration with PAHO WHO. For more information, check our website at www.pho.gov.ph.